Hello, everybody. Today our reading comes from Acts chapter 16. And this is a story about Paul and Silas. And it's a very interesting topic that I like to bring up because this story highlights uh, some of the ideas in Christianity I think we like to pass over and to kind of ignore. So in this story, Paul and Silas have traveled to Philippi. I think it was in Macedonia, and they met a lady named Lydia who invited them into her house. Lydia was a seller of purple, which was a very dignified royal color that people who were in high positions of society wore. So she was probably middle class, upper middle class, pretty well off. So she was a Christian. She invited them into her house to stay there with her, and that's where they stayed during the time that they were in Philippi. Well, during their travels and while they were in the city, fellowshipping with other Christians and spreading the word, Paul and Silas were walking around the city, and this little girl, who the scripture says was possessed by a demonic spirit, was following them around, proclaiming that they were followers of Christ. And uh, eventually, the scripture says Paul got annoyed that this demonic spirit in this girl was following them, and he turned around and cast the demon out of the child. Well, there was a group of people who'd been profiteering off of the condition of this child, who would appear to be able to make predictions and tell the future. And now that her condition had changed, they could no longer make money off of it. So they got really mad and they grabbed Paul and Silas and they took them to the magistrate. They took them to the leaders of the town, and kind of a mob ensued and demanded that these Jews who were trying to stir up problems be cast in jail. So Paul and Silas were thrown in jail. And in our society, a lot of times we think about jails for bad people. Right? Jails for people who break the law, or who there's something wrong with them and they're othered by society. And in Christianity, that's not really what it tells us about the people in jail. It actually tells us that the people in jail are some of the people that we're supposed to care for and look after and reach out to as part of our Christian ministry. Because not the government doesn't always look out for the interest of Christian interests or of your civil liberties, and it's not they aren't always righteous in their judgments. Some people are innocent, and overall, Christians are just told not to judge. So Paul and Silas are thrown in this jail, and as they're in the jail, they are joyful in their suffering, and that's a strange idea, right? So if you were thrown in jail and you had you weren't given a trial or anything, you were just sitting there, and would you be singing songs in the prison? Would you be praising God? I mean, it would be pretty difficult for me to even think about that. In my mind, I'd probably be so self-centered. I'd be thinking about myself and doing this whole woe is I thing that I probably wouldn't even be thinking about praising God at that time. I don't think I'd be blaming God, but to be praising him at that moment is a pretty amazing thing to hear about. And as they're sitting there praising God in their cells, it says that they were bearing witness to the other prisoners. So they're sitting there singing and preaching and teaching, and the next thing you know, an earthquake happens, and all their shackles fall off, and all the doors open. And about this time, an earthquake will do this, but it'll wake you up out of your sleep. And this guard wakes up in the middle of the night, and he sees all the doors open, and in his mind, worst case scenario, all of his prisoners have ran out and left. But instead, he takes out his sword and he's going to kill himself because he feels like he was derelict of duty and dishonored his family or his country, and he was going to kill himself. And Paul tells him, "Whoa, don't kill yourself, we're all still here." So in my mind, the testimony of Paul and Silas was so strong, and those people were so encapsulated by what had happened, and that this earthquake timely was no coincidence, and this was something from God, and something special was happening there. And they were so captivated by this that no one ran out of the jail. They all stayed there. probably to hear more from what these two men of God had said or were going to say. And at that time, the jailer put his sword down and asked what he had to do to be saved. See, this is a story of how in our suffering, God uses our light to reach others. God can use us if we have the right mentality. And that's the thing, we have to cultivate that mentality and cultivate the way we look at the world in such a way that when the bad stuff is happening to us, we don't pull inside of ourselves and focus on that pain. We don't focus on that suffering. Instead, we continue to push out and we continue to be thankful for the things that we do have, for those freedoms that we do possess. Now, going back to this idea, I want to put this idea out there, and it's that I think our default setting is that the idea of order is good, and that the idea of chaos is bad. And I'd say a lot of the times that is the case. But I think in Christianity, there's an element of chaos that embodies our very religion. Now, hold with me there. I know it sounds a little weird to say, but I'm going to read a couple scripture. Okay, this first verse, it's just two verses. It's Matthew 10:34 and 35. It says, "Do not assume that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come here to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." Sounds like a pretty weird thing to say. Bear with me. What I think this means, my best understanding, is it says, "Do not assume I have come to bring peace to the earth." Because anywhere that evil exists and that there's good to conflict and stand in the way of that evil, there's going to be conflict. And then that conflict is the antithesis of peace. So as long as there are good people to stand in the way of evil, or righteous people standing up for what God has spoken to us, then there's going to be some conflict, and then there will be no peace. Now, think of some situations that have happened in history where there were bad orders. Think of the Nazi regime. Think about the Roman Empire, where they were crucifying people left and right and killing people who didn't fall in line. See, that's order. It's not the type of order that you like to think of. It's very authoritarian. It's very putting the thumb down on people. Now, Christians in these environments weren't bending the knee. They were bucking up against the chaos, against the order, and in that way, they were the chaos. They were that catalyst that went to a system to change, because that's also another way to talk about chaos, right, is an element of change. Now, anytime you have a corrupt system or a corrupt civilization or practices that have been instilled over hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, and then something comes that challenges those ideas, that's the element of chaos. Now, Paul and Silas had walked into the city, and they had challenged the status quo. The status quo was the order. It is how things had always been. These guys had been making money off of something that was wrong with this little girl. And when Paul and Silas came in and they changed that situation for the better, especially for that girl, they were being chaotic in a system that was well established. And, we're called to be that. There's an ancient proverb, Chinese proverb that says, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered in." And it's very true. If you've ever, been in too many social situations, if you're a little socially awkward, you're going to stick out. People might make fun of you. If you, that's what, bullies have focused on for years, is picking on those people who've stuck out. But in a way, Christians are supposed to be those people that stick out too. If you're a Christian and you're acting out your faith, if you're stepping up, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Daniel in the lion's den, people are going to know that you stand for something. And people who stand for something are usually criticized. People are going to poke at them. People are going to see them. And that pressure from society, because you are standing against things that they stand for, is going to try to nail you down. Because the fact that you stand for something that opposes them makes them feel a certain way. And, people don't like feeling a certain way these days. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And sometimes we have to take the consequences of the things that happen in our life and bear that suffering to be the light that's shining out that everyone's supposed to see. It says, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. He came to bring a sword to tear down and to fight against the injustices of the world, to fight against corruption and greed, deceit, the pride in people's lives. And all that change creates a lot of chaos. The church itself continues to change for the better, for the worse sometimes. Back and forth it goes. Humans make mistakes. Some other humans correct them, and the pendulum keeps swinging. But we have to understand that this chaos is a good thing at times, and order is a good thing at times. And the two help each other. You establish an order that's a little bit better than the order that was before it. And then you count on the chaos of the system to come in and correct and eat away and chip out that weak part that's still left there, so that you'll know what needs to be improved. And I think that is the chaos of Christianity. It's a force that tempers through fire, and whatever's left has passed the test and can be improved upon, and the rest is burned away. And we have to understand that the fire isn't always a pleasant experience. That was my scripture reading today. It was Acts chapter 16. Look it up for yourself. The next day, Paul and Silas were released by the magistrate. They actually found out that Paul and Silas were Roman citizens and escorted them to Lydia's house, where it says they fellowshiped with the other Christians that were there, and then they departed from the city. The book of Acts is very interesting, talking about the acts of the disciples and the travelings of Paul and his partners through their missionary journeys. It's a very, very wonderful story. Once again, let's keep the country in your prayers. The Iran situation, hope for some peaceful resolution, and that our brothers and sisters won't be sent overseas to fight. Pray for those who've lost their loved ones. Pray for those who are fighting and struggling for their lives from mental situations, physical ailments, all kinds of things. We all got a lot of problems going on, and keep each other in your prayers, support each other, and everyone have a good day.